Now, more stories, insights, and analysis of Illinois policy and politics. This is Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Policy Institute. Once again, your host, AM 560's Dan Proft.
Dan Proft and Pat Hughes, co-founder of the Illinois Opportunity Project, back with you on this edition of Illinois Rising. And as we move towards the end of the month and the end of the legislative session, Pat, there's a lot of renewed chatter about a grand bargain and the dire predictions and the Chicken Little routine that is being offered up, mainly by Democrats who want the governor to capitulate and just raise taxes without doing anything to change the financial future of the state or the quality of life and the cost of that life in Illinois. The newly minted comptroller, Susana Mendoza, saying people are literally dying because of the budget impasse. What is the prospect, do you think, at this juncture for the quote-unquote grand bargain, which from the Democrats' perspective would be tax increases, and from the governor's perspective would be a willingness to talk about increasing taxes in certain areas, but only in exchange for something that bends the cost curve to live, work, start a business in Illinois?
First of all, Dan, as a Christian, I'm very sad that people are literally dying because there's literally, she said, dying that there's no budget. I don't think the prospects for a grand bargain are good, and I hope they're not good. And the reason I hope they're not good is because the Democrats are not going to give the type of structural reform that would be meaningful in any way for us to get something done going forward to move our economy along and get things taken care of going forward. They're not going to do that, right? They'd give some reforms that appear like they'd be something on a campaign ad, but they'd offer no structural advantage. And so Rauner wouldn't get anything. And so if we get a grand bargain, it's because Rauner panicked, capitulated, and said, I'm going to try to fight and live to another day, say I got a budget, say I got it accomplished, and run against J.B. Pritzker or Kennedy on that basis and use that, take that issue, hopefully, from his perspective, off the table. But I hope that doesn't happen, because if he does get that type of budget, it is not a budget that's going to help the people of Illinois. And I also think that they will tie it around his neck from a campaign perspective also, because Pritzker and Kennedy will have nothing to do with it. So they'll say Rauner raised taxes. By
the way, I was wondering where my Barca lounger had gone, and it turned out it showed up in a campaign commercial. It's running for governor. J.B. Pritzker, where do you find the race for the Democrat nomination between Pritzker, who's up on the air? That's how I know where my Barca lounger went. It's kind of like he's like a Barca lounger with shoes.
Yeah. And you know that ad, Dan, where he's at the end and all the kids are surrounding him. He looks like it's like Jim Jones in Guyana. I mean, he looks like a little bit of a cult figure, a kind of a larger cult figure.
He's larger than life.
He is larger than life.
There's no question about that.
Right now, because of his wealth and because he's out there, I give a slight advantage to Pritzker. Structurally, though, I think Kennedy potentially is the more difficult candidate for Rauner to beat, and so we'll have to see how that plays out.
Even though they're talking about, Pritzker's talking about, well, it's rumored that Pritzker is willing to spend as much as $70 million on a primary. He's buying up union endorsements. He's buying up endorsements of elected officials in the black community, so kind of, core representatives of core constituencies in a Democrat primary. And if he does his kind of flim-flammery about thinking big, working together, all of the other bromides that have provided, that have proved so powerful in Illinois politics, difficult to derail?
Yeah, he's going to be difficult to derail even by Kennedy, although I'm hopeful that Kennedy can derail it and it can be a really, really competitive race. And the reason is there's this third guy in the race, Dan Biss, big liberal from Evanston, Illinois. If those three guys can stay in it and we can pull them, they can be pulled further and further to the left. When we get to the general election, whoever comes out of it is going to be scarred, where Rauner currently can coast through the primary without any announced or major opposition. As a consequence of that, there could be some issues, heavy left issues that Kennedy and or Pritzker would have to deal with in the general election. If Pritzker consolidates support early, then he doesn't have to face that stuff, and he becomes a harder opponent for Rauner to
What
beat.
about the prospect of a Dan Biss or Scott Drury as a state rep from Lake Forest is also rumored to run for governor on the Dem side? Them doing the I'm independent, Madigan has too much power, he's been there too long. Dan Biss kind of started this. Is there the opportunity to run between the middle of Pritzker and Kennedy and in some respects take that issue away from Rauner if somebody like that were the nominee, where they give the appearance of independence even if it's not the actuality of it.
Yeah, I don't see that working for Biss because both Pritzker and Kennedy can make the same argument, and it's more.
But they're not currently, is my point.
But eventually they could, and they'll have more credibility to make it because they haven't been a senator or a rep in Springfield for all these years, and so it's going to be very hard for Biss to take that path. There is a narrow path for someone like Biss to win, and that would be on the hardcore left. But if Pritzker is out there buying off unions and the African-American community already, he's trying to consolidate the hard left away from Biss. So I don't think that is going to work. I think it's a Kennedy versus Pritzker thing, and I think it's Pritzker in the lead right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think if you could run up the middle potentially and get the Goo-Goos and some that do, some in the Democrat Party that like to think of themselves as independent, and so they're willing to kind of vote against Madigan, even if they're not willing to vote against the underlying policies that Madigan is advancing, which are no different than what the Lakefront liberals and the North Shore liberals want to see advanced. I don't know, maybe. But I do know this, that train that we're using as a metaphor for Pritzker, that is going to be like unstoppable. That is good. You're going to need Denzel Washington and Chris Pine to climb on top of J.B. Pritzker and pull that thing, and he's going to come across that, come around that.
That's a good movie.
Hairpin curve.
That's a really good movie, by the way.
Yeah. But I mean, that's kind of the runaway train. I mean, if J.B. Pritzker gets ahead of steam,
you can't stop him.
There are no brakes.
He's
on
like
that
the
thing.
fridge. He's like the fridge. It's like George Cumby. He's going to roll right over you.
I mean, he'll take out small communities too if he goes off the rails. Is my concern that he literally, to borrow from Susanna Mendoza, he literally could create a human catastrophe where he just spin out of control, off the rails, and into the countryside.
My daddy was killed by a giant Barcalounger.